All right, welcome to another lesson, H Radio 223 part-timers. For this week, we are covering 55, 56, and 57, which closes up news nicely and nice and clean, right? Um, so we've got these very short two lessons to go through, both eight, and when I say, sorry, not eight, man, this one's eight slides, should I say? But 56 and 57, which is 57 is particularly a roundup of everything that we have covered. I'm going to be pulling out, and I'll explain that also in the next video, right? I'll be pulling out certain parts of that revised or revision presentation, right? That I don't want to kind of focus on. There's some new points in there, but it won't be very long, right? Okay, so well, I've got okay. So all right, we're gonna go into specifically looking at the sounds. Okay, the sounds we use, sound bites, voxes, and that along that line, should I say, media along that line, to really make our news pop, right? And when I say pop, it does sound nice, as opposed to quoting a person. Should you be able to find the audible clips or the audio clip, right, where a person is saying something which might then obviously contribute to a soundbite, right? Or for example, we want to be able to get the public opinion, which is a box, the voice of the people. Then we would do exactly that to make sure that the bulletin itself really has like more dimension than just saying, and I say, and I quote, right? There is also nothing, look, if you can't find a clip, then say, and I quote, right? Or this person was quoted to say, right? Or is quoted to say, etc., etc. Okay. Beyond Powerful Radio. So that is chapter 19. The sound of the story, 223 to 227. And then from Next Level Radio, chapter 5, 5.3.7, integrating audio, which is 206 to 208. There is an exercise here. So let me just go there. There's an exercise that please take some time to do. So answer activity 5C on page 210, excuse me, Next Level Radio. The reason of that, and there's another one here at the end, also answer 5B while you add it. So do 5B and C, okay? When you have answered this, again, with all these pre-recorded lessons, I would really like to hear your answers or where you struggled or wherever it is that you need some clarity on. But all the answers to all activities in the textbook can be found at the end of the textbook. So do the answer, check it against the what is at the back of the textbook, and then see whether or not you are okay. Right, good. Give it your best shot. What we find here are the same news clips that we covered in the previous, I think it was the previous lesson or so, when we actually listened to the whole bulletin. The only reason they are here again is to once again just throw some focus on the sound bite that they include, or like I say, a vox, or yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I was going to say sound bite, the only reason I paused it for a second was because, as we know, for example, like in the 702 one, right, there is, or the eyewitness news one, there is quite a long field reported produced segment, which still is considered a sound bite, right? Pulled together, which could also include voxes, right? Because it was actually, I'm going to put it as a piece, which could include then sound bites as well as voxes, depending on just the construct of that particular field reporter's produced piece. Okay, all right. Let's do one. I just want to get to that point where just give it a second. All right, gets to the piece.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good morning, I'm Tara Penny. We start with the latest from Afghanistan. Reuters is reporting that 5 people were killed in the chaos at Kabul airport this morning as U.S. troops guarded the evacuation of embassy staff just a day after the Taliban seized the capital. It's not immediately clear how the victims died. A U.S. official said troops had fired in the air to deter people trying to force their way onto a military flight that was set to take U.S. diplomats and embassy staff out of the fallen city. Frantic scenes broke out overnight as Taliban officials declared the war was over and issued statements aimed at calming the panic that's been building in Kabul as the militants, who ruled from 1996 to 2001, surrendered the US-backed government forces. President Ashraf Ghani fled from the country yesterday as the Islamists entered Kabul virtually unopposed, saying he wanted to avoid bloodshed. Taliban spokesperson Suhail Shaheen said in a message on Twitter their fighters were under strict orders not to harm anyone. It took the Taliban just over a week to seize control of the country after a lightning sweep that ended in Kabul, as government forces, trained for years and equipped by the United States and others at a cost of billions of dollars, melted away. Al Jazeera has broadcast footage of what it said were Taliban commanders in the presidential palace, surrounded by dozens of armed fighters. Back home now, the South African Medical Association has encouraged medical practitioners to support the country's COVID-19 vaccination campaign. A prominent heart surgeon has landed herself in trouble for her anti-vax views. SAMA has dispelled any doubts about safety and efficacy of these vaccines, stressing jabs have been put through rigorous testing by the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. Kevin Brunt reports.
The South African Medical Association has condemned anti-COVID-19 vaccination
This is the part. Okay, I know you know, but this is the part.
sentiments expressed by some healthcare workers. Salma stresses this only fuels vaccine hesitancy. Chairperson Dr. Angelique Kutsia says the benefits of coronavirus vaccines have been scientifically proven.
SAMA cannot support doctors who are giving out anti-vaccination sentiment to their patients, which is contrary to the pandemic, to the WHO regulations.
The Netcare Hospital Group has last week dissociated itself from anti-COVID-19 vaccination comments made by renowned heart surgeon Dr. Susan Vosloo. Kevin Brand, Eyewitness News.
The ANC in the Northwest says it will only...
Okay, so you saw within obviously that piece there was a soundbite because the reporter isn't addressing that particular person directly, extracted that sound somewhere, and then included that in there. All right, fair enough. Just want to contextualize exactly what it is that we are talking about, and so that you obviously know. With the others, maybe I'll come back to them. I just don't want to rinse, cycle, repeat, and that is the reason why I might not play it again, and rather get into more of the theory right here. And then I've got 2 videos that I'd like to actually play around creating news. It's I'm doing some fillers and more generic stuff because there isn't a very specific media available to talk further upon Voxes or Vox specific or whatever it may be. So having said that, you will see a Vox and a visual Vox, right? Always somewhere, and you also a visual, so I don't know what it's called, a video bite maybe, within our daily, obviously, television news, right? So we can definitely look at, let's say, a bulletin or a news report that is done on TV, which we have before, right, in previous lessons, and again, kind of really understand the context of these two ways that we can integrate sound, right? Sound integration in news, sports, traffic, weather, really is, it's us obtaining, like let's say, an interview from a stakeholder in the story or securing some commentary that they shared, right? So these Vox Pops are usually conducted, so the voice of the people, as either public opinion surveys, limited surveys, and street polls, right? So let's go through each one quickly. Public opinion surveys need to be conducted scientifically by a market research company that specializes in such surveys, right? Let's go to another one. You're going to ask us to me, okay, well, how I'm not seeing this. Limited surveys can be conducted by journalists, right, with the support of the newsroom and editorial teams using a structured questionnaire, right? That's pretty much what we see most of the time. We have a news reporter, a field reporter that goes out and is asking the same question about, let's say, a specific, obviously a specific core of a news story, right? But that person, and when you do record voxes, right, you should be asking that same question in many different types of ways, right? So should we, like, let's say we talk about electricity tariffs, right? Okay, one, it depends on obviously who we're talking to and obviously their positioning or whatever it is. Maybe they're rich and they're poor, maybe they're in Joburg or Cape Town, I'm not sure, right? So, for example, let's say I start as a field reporter and have like a direct interview with the minister of, and I don't even know what department it falls under. So I'm so sorry, I'm really bad at politics, right? But okay, whoever is responsible for that, right? Always speak to like an ESCOM head or whatever it may be, that shares some light on why the tariffs are so incredibly high right now. Right, so that would be, let's say, a Vox. In conjunction with that, right? I follow that up with people on the streets' opinions as to like here's the question, right? So not how do you feel about the electricity hike? How are you dealing with it? So how are you managing within your own household to pay for and obviously use the prepaid meters, etc., etc.? That's the base question, right? Okay, so I go to the first person and I literally can ask that question, a longer interview will obviously happen. I'm saying, and what you see on TV or you'll hear on radio is obviously so it's a much more diluted, edited version of it, right? So let's start the conversation and be like, okay, obviously, where do you live? Like, when did you switch over to prepaid, etc., etc. Okay, and then I'd ask the question directly, So what, for example, what was the difference between June's, let's say, electricity bill and then July's in your household? And they tell me, right, okay, and then I'd follow that up with what is your reaction to that, specifically if you had to say something in response to the government, or these obviously, let's say, upper providers like ESCOM, whatever it may be, right? Okay, and they'd say something. Then I got another person, and I'd say that I'd speak of, so now we obviously have a power, so as opposed to load shedding. But now the thing is that everyone experiences load shedding the moment they run out of, electricity because the prepaid isn't loaded and whatever it may be. What did you prefer? Right. And now that person's going to say, I prefer nothing. I prefer a service that actually is within the public's interest, right? And not something that puts us in another situation that is difficult, right? Okay, still speaking about the same thing to two different people. And I hope I hope that makes a bit of a sense, right? Okay, so street polls must be used to gather statistical information, etc., etc. Tips and points to remember when recording Vox Pops for radio. So prepare a single, simple, open-minded question, just like I told you, right? Check that the equipment is working well, and that is prior to starting. So that makes common sense. We find that we don't often do that in general before we go on a live, like an IG live, or we want to record, let's say, audio for a podcast or for a pre-record piece that we want to do on air, etc., etc. We don't quite always check the condition of the equipment, right, and the quality though, and we should always do that. And we can't do something twice in this industry. We can't ask someone, please come back and say that again for me, or this, or I need to schedule another time for the same interview because, I forgot to switch this particular setting on. Whatever it may be, right? Choose a good location. Please, obviously, sound friendly, and be friendly and relaxed with the interviewees, and interview enough people for your needs, right? When you don't get what you actually want, keep talking to more people so that you only select the best boxes, for example, right? That really color and add value to the story. When you do edit the sound bites, and here it is, choose strong commentary that also is diverse, right? That helps a listener in this case follow another path to the story. It helps the story along, right? Do not keep repeating the question, please. As I said, you got to use a different angle of the same question that you are asking. Choose a variety of sounds and opinions. So while keeping the order in which you are presenting the sound bites in mind, you will also want to go kind of like beginning, middle, and end, So we want to be able to end with this particular point of view and start this particular point of view, because it is storytelling at the end of the day, right? I can't tell you what that might be. It always depends on your educated decision, your professional decision, good, and this makes more of an impact, and this is definitely information or perspective that people do want to know but don't know, right? Whatever. Make sure that all your sound levels are correct. Please, you can fix things in editing. You can't, man. I had this struggle. I've had this struggle enough times in my life, like in this particular. When when I so sometimes I you've arranged, let's say, an interview, whatever it may be, right? And I've set up, let's say, I've arranged a certain place, normally on location somewhere, and then, but for real now, this particular room or this particular office or this whatever space has an echo, and you sit there, and there is no other place to go to because this is now organized or whatever it may be. It's not an excuse, absolutely not. So the thing is that in that moment, I make an unprofessional call and I say, just record it, because if you can record it clearly, right, I can maybe work with some of the audio to alleviate the irritation of an echo or whatever it may be, rather like some kind of reverb or whatever it is. I'm not sure there's terms all as well. Echoing sounds right? Anyway, and the thing is that it's done enough times where, obviously I and you will, with your sound editing, etc., would know how to remove such things, right? Sometimes it's absolutely impossible to get that echo or that whatever it is, kind of these things that go wrong. Let's say that like what am I looking like? That type of stuff, which could happen, like some sort of static or whatever it is. Then you're really in trouble, man. And for a bass editor, so someone that isn't a sound engineer, you're going to struggle a lot. It really is a waste of time of the person, a wasted potential of a great, great, great piece that you're putting together just because we didn't make the right calls at that particular time. Vox popses, that's not right. Vox pops as sound are usually positioned in between bulletins and follow the results of the aforementioned surveys and also polls or the story to which they refer. So voice records, should I say, must be clear, and they must be mixed at the right volume for an on-air play out. And that you obviously will be told, like it needs to be normalized at this, equalized at that, whatever it may be, right? Okay. Please be aware of your surroundings. Record if you're outside and it's windy, if you're outside and you can hear like you're next to traffic, if you're outside and it's at a shopping mall or a concert or whatever it is, because there's too much noise at an event, a sporting match, whatever. You can't do these things. You got to think very carefully about how it is that you're going to take this particular person, move them to a quieter area, and then record there. Okay, the sound of the story, the power of the story lies obviously in its sound, right? I'm even telling that myself now. I'm determined, never again shall I compromise, right? Whenever possible, record and use natural sound, right? So if you're covering a parade, festival, or demonstration, this is obvious. So I spoke about background noise, right? For atmosphere, you would record blankly, like bits, like sound bits from the parade or the festival or a demonstration, right? So that you can transition well enough between, let's say, a narrative that you're giving, or maybe from one vox to another, right? Or vox to narrative to vox, whatever it may be, right? Okay. So personalizing that news, put yourself into it, but keep your opinion, please, out of it. There's no place for opinion in news unless it is a show, like an actual talk show, and it's news-centric, right? So sometimes it works very well when a reporter expresses genuine feelings about a story. Like, for example, they can say, listen, this is shocking. I've never seen something like this before. I've never covered a disaster this bad in this area, and it is devastating, right? Stay objective though with the facts, but retain your humanity, right? One CNN reporter covering the massive hurricane, literally, I just said about a disaster, right? The massive hurricane that overwhelmed the entire city of New Orleans, which you know very well of, changed many Americans' expectations of reporting from disaster zones, right? So while it's best to keep an opinion out of the news, wherever there is a personal connection to the story, don't be a robot, right? There is a potential for more powerful radio to be created. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share over there. And I'm really hoping, not hoping, I've got the two videos lined up. I just want to share sound. I'm just going to go to YouTube, and I want to go to this one first.
Hello, my name is Gunan and I present a radio show. I'm also a trained journalist for the BBC World Service, which means I get to travel. I've worked in radio a lot, and writing for radio or a podcast is a little bit different to write the internet. Once you've decided on your story, you need to write a script for it, which means telling the audience what the story is all about. So this could include an interview or different people's opinions, which is what we call a vox pop, and you'll need to go out and record it. Or your radio report, maybe a street bulletin, or a live interview with someone who's involved in the story. When writing for radio, there are a few things you need to remember, like writing a new script. Keep it clear, concise, and correct. Remember that the listener will only hear the word once, so you don't have any visuals or graphics to help you along. So you have to keep your sentences short and simple and not use very big words. Don't say,
the club have said they will terminate the manager's contract with immediate effect.
Just say, the club has sacked the manager. Don't say,
the police deployed 3 units.
Just say, the police sent 3 cars. You're writing for speech, so remember that whatever you write, someone else is going to read that out loud. So for example, if you write 4 p.m, you would say 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So make sure you write as you'd speak. Before you go out, read your script out loud, make sure it makes sense, and if you have time, ask someone to listen. You might have noticed that when reading a book, you have an idea of what the characters look like and what the scenes look like. And it's exactly the same thing for radio. You want to paint a picture for the audience so they can see where the story is going and what's happening. And there are a number of ways you can do that. Use sound effects. So for example, if you're doing a story about rowing or a building site, construction, water, that way the listener knows where you are straight away. Description. So just remember, the listener can't see what you can see. So you have to give as much description as possible, from colours to scenery to what's in the background, atmosphere. Some locations have real atmosphere, like a construction site with drilling or a swimming pool or busy roads. So before you leave your location, make sure you record at least 30 seconds of the atmosphere that you can add into your report. Once you've painted your picture, remember to control the background. For example, if there's too much noise while you are interviewing your interviewee and it's drowning out what your interviewee has to say, then you can kindly tell them to lower the noise or move to a better location. Or for example, if there's a plane flying over, pause. Once it's gone, start again. Before you leave your location, make sure you check your recording. And if you haven't recorded anything, you can always do it again. Once you get back to base, you need to edit your audio. You need to pick the best clips and edit out all the ums and the ahs. You then need to write a cue. This is the bit that the presenter reads out to introduce your report. It should sum up your story in a couple of seconds. So those are my tips for writing and making a report for radio or a podcast. Why don't you give it a try?
Oh, she's great. Yeah. No, I'm now in love with her. She's so great. She literally said everything I've been telling you in the past couple of weeks, right? So it's just, I'm not going to let this play. Since I'll play over it, right? She did it in 3 minutes, right? Fantastic. Love it, love it, love it.
Hi there, Phil here from Radio.co, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you just how easy it can be to schedule in automated top-of-hour news bulletins. So where you need to go here on your account is to the media section, and then you want to...
Yep, hold on a second, just give me a second. No, that's not correct. We'll just take that out. And then go to default view. No, okay. No, I'm leaving this one out. I'm so sorry. I confused it with something else, obviously, right? Okay, that's a cool one anyway. There we go. That's pretty cool. Starting a community radio station completely has no relevance to what we're talking about today. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Let's leave it on a high note with the BBC contribution right there. All right, we'll see you in, or I'll kind of visually see you in the next one. Cheers.